The silver ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning on a Tuesday morning. There were 12 of them, each one larger than the biggest aircraft carrier humanity had ever built. They hung in space like massive monuments, blocking out stars and casting shadows across entire continents. The world's military forces went on high alert immediately. Fighter jets scrambled. Nuclear missiles were armed and ready. Every radar screen and telescope on the planet focused on the alien vessels. But the ships did nothing. They just waited. 6 hours later, a message came through on every communication channel simultaneously. Radios, televisions, computers, and even some car speakers all broadcast the same thing. A voice spoke in perfect English, then switched to Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other languages. Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Galactic Council. We come in peace and welcome you to the civilized galaxy. The message continued for 20 minutes. The voice explained that 47 alien species had formed a peaceful alliance called the Galactic Council. They maintained order across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had rules about war, trade, and diplomacy. Now, they wanted to add humanity to their organization. It sounded wonderful at first. The voice promised technology, knowledge, and protection. Humanity would gain access to faster-than-light travel, advanced medicine, and unlimited, clean energy. All they had to do was accept council membership. Then came the conditions. Earth would need to place itself under council authority. The planet would be divided into administrative zones managed by council governors. Humanity would need to reduce its military forces by 90%. All nuclear weapons would be surrendered and destroyed. Council peacekeeping troops would occupy strategic locations across the planet to ensure compliance. This is standard procedure, the voice assured them. Every species goes through integration. It is for your own protection and the safety of the galactic community. The message ended with a deadline. Earth had 30 standard cycles, about 45 Earth days, to accept the terms. If humanity refused, the Council would be forced to implement integration by other means. The transmission cut off, leaving the world in chaos. Emergency meetings began immediately. World leaders gathered through secure video channels. The United Nations held an emergency session that lasted for 3 days straight. Military analysts studied the alien ships, calculating their capabilities and weaknesses. Scientists debated whether the technology gap was too large to overcome, but something else was happening in the shadows. Deep beneath a mountain in Colorado, in a facility that officially did not exist, a group of men and women sat around a conference table. They wore uniforms from different nations: American, Chinese, Russian, Indian, Brazilian, and others. This was the Contingency Committee, formed 20 years earlier after the first alien probe was detected passing through the outer solar system. General Sarah Martinez stood at the head of the table. The probe we captured in 2029 gave us enough technology to start preparing. We've been monitoring council transmissions for 15 years. We knew this day would come. She pressed a button, and holographic displays filled the room. Star charts showed council territory, military deployments, and trade routes. Another screen showed detailed analysis of their peacekeeping operations on other worlds. They've done this 47 times before, Martinez continued. Every time, it's the same pattern. They make contact, offer membership, and when the species refuses, they send in their peacekeeping fleet. The target surrenders after a brief show of force. Their military occupies the planet, and within a generation, the conquered species becomes just another member of the council. Can we fight them? Asked Admiral Chen from the Chinese delegation. Martinez nodded to a colonel who stood up. We've spent 2 decades reverse engineering their technology and building weapons they won't expect. The asteroid belt is full of railgun platforms disguised as mining equipment. We have 300 autonomous combat drones in orbit, hidden among our satellites, and we've weaponized things they never would have considered. The question is not whether we can fight, Martinez said. The question is what we tell them. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for acceptance, saying the technology was worth the loss of sovereignty. Others demanded immediate military action. But slowly, a consensus formed. Humanity would refuse the terms, but they would do it diplomatically. They would buy time to prepare. 3 weeks later, the Council representatives came to Earth. They landed at a specially prepared site in Geneva, Switzerland. 3 aliens stepped off their shuttle, escorted by combat robots that looked more ceremonial than functional. The lead alien was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. He introduced himself as Diplomat Valorian, senior representative of the Council. His translator device rendered his words into English. "Have you considered our generous offer?" End quote. Quote, Ambassador Chen, chosen to represent Earth's unified response, stood calmly. Behind him, representatives from every nation stood together for the first time in human history. "We have considered your offer thoroughly," Chen said. "We appreciate your willingness to share your technology and knowledge with us." Valorian smiled, his alien features expressing satisfaction. "Excellent. Then you accept the integration terms?" "We respectfully decline," Chen said. The smile vanished. Valorian's 4 arms moved in what might have been confusion or anger. "You decline? Perhaps you did not understand the alternative. Integration is not optional. It is the law of civilized space." "We understand perfectly," Chen replied. "We choose independence." Valorian stood silent for a long moment. Then he made a gesture to his companions, and they walked back to their shuttle. Before entering, he turned back. "You have made a grave mistake. The Council maintains order through peace, but we are prepared to enforce compliance. You have 30 cycles. Use them to reconsider." The shuttle lifted off and returned to the orbiting ships. That night, Ambassador Chen addressed the world. "They gave us a choice between surrender and war. We chose neither. We chose to remain free. Whatever comes next, we face it together, as one species, as one people, as humanity." In orbit, the 12 silver ships remained, watching and waiting. On Earth, hidden weapons came online. Soldiers moved into position. Scientists worked around the clock in secret facilities. The countdown had begun. Humanity had 30 cycles to prepare for war against an enemy that had never lost. The 30 cycles passed like a countdown to the end of the world. Every major city had evacuation plans, ready. Shelters that could hold millions of people opened underground. Children were taught emergency procedures in schools. The entire planet prepared for invasion. On the morning of the 31st cycle, 200 alien warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They formed into neat formations, organized and disciplined. This was the 7th Enforcement Fleet, led by Commander Thrax of the Kreth Empire. Commander Thrax sat in his command chair aboard the flagship Dominion. He had overseen 4 peacekeeping operations before this one. All had ended quickly. He expected this would be the same. "Send the standard compliance message," Thrax ordered. His communication officer obeyed immediately. The message broadcast toward Earth was simple and direct. "Attention, Earth. This is the 7th Enforcement Fleet of the Galactic Council. You have violated Council integration protocols. Stand down all military forces and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in destruction of military targets. Compliance will result in minimal casualties. You have 1 standard hour to respond." On Earth, in the underground command center in Colorado, General Martinez watched the fleet approach on holographic displays. She could see every ship, their positions, their formations. Her analysts had already identified their weapons systems and shield configurations from the stolen Council database. "They're following standard peacekeeping doctrine," one analyst reported. "Slow approach, intimidation formation, minimal weapon charging. They expect us to surrender before shots are fired." Martinez smiled grimly. "How wrong they are. Execute defensive protocol. 7. Across the solar system, hidden systems came alive. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hundreds of what appeared to be simple mining platforms suddenly rotated. Concealed panels slid open, revealing massive railgun barrels. These weapons had been built over 20 years, using materials harvested from the asteroids themselves. They had been tested in secret, and they were devastating. The railguns fired solid tungsten projectiles, each one weighing several tons, accelerated to incredible speeds. They crossed the distance between the asteroid belt and the approaching fleet in minutes. There was no warning, no energy signature to detect. Just solid metal, moving at thousands of kilometers per second. The first projectile struck the shield of a council cruiser. The shield, designed to stop energy weapons and smaller missiles, shattered like glass. The tungsten rod punched through the ship from bow to stern, the kinetic energy tearing the vessel apart. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as internal systems failed. 12 more ships died in the first volley. "What was that?" Thrax shouted, lurching forward in his command chair as alarms blared throughout the Dominion. "Report! Unknown weapons fire from the asteroid belt." His tactical officer screamed. "Kinetic projectiles. Non-energy based. Our shields are ineffective. We've lost 13 ships." Thrax could barely process the information. Kinetic weapons? No civilized species used kinetic weapons. They were primitive, crude, and impossible to aim accurately at long distances. Except these humans had aimed them perfectly. "Return fire! Target the asteroid belt," Thrax ordered. The fleet's energy weapons lit up space, firing at the mining platforms. Several exploded in brilliant flashes. But there were hundreds of platforms, spread across millions of kilometers of space. The fleet could not destroy them all. And then Earth's second layer of defense activated. Satellites that had orbited Earth for years, disguised as weather monitors and communication relays, suddenly changed position. Panels opened, revealing focusing arrays. These were nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, weapons that had been theoretical for decades before humanity finally built working models. The lasers fired in coordinated strikes. Beams of concentrated X-ray radiation sliced through space, invisible but deadly. They burned through ship hulls, melted weapons arrays, and disabled engines. The Council fleet's shields, calibrated for different wavelengths, offered limited protection. 20 more ships fell silent, drifting wrecks leaking atmosphere and radiation. "Retreat! Retreat to defensive formation," Thrax ordered, his voice breaking with panic. This was not supposed to happen. Peacekeeping operations did not result in fleet losses. The primitives were supposed to surrender after seeing superior force. The fleet tried to pull back toward Mars, regrouping into a tighter defensive formation. But humanity was not finished. From Earth's orbit, what appeared to be space debris suddenly activated. Thousands of small objects, each no larger than a car, began moving with purpose. These were autonomous kill vehicles, AI-controlled weapons that humanity had seeded throughout near-Earth space. They had no life support, no crew, and no mercy. The kill vehicles swarmed the retreating Council ships like angry hornets. They targeted engines, sensor arrays, and weapon systems with suicide strikes. Each impact released shaped charges that punched through armor plating. The Council's point defense systems, designed to intercept missiles, struggled to track the small, fast-moving targets. By the time the 7th Enforcement Fleet reached Mars orbit, they had lost 84 ships. Commander Thrax sat in shock, staring at his tactical display. The neat formations were gone. His proud fleet was scattered, damaged, and demoralized. "Establish a defensive perimeter around Mars," he ordered quietly, "and send a priority message to Council Command. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them Earth has actual military capabilities." The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, requesting reinforcements for a peacekeeping operation? That has never happened before." V. Reported. "Just send the message," Thrax said. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted in the command center. Staff members hugged each other, tears of relief streaming down faces. They had done it. They had repelled an alien invasion fleet, but General Martinez did not celebrate. She knew what came next. "Get me Ambassador Chen," she ordered. When Chen appeared on her screen, Martinez spoke bluntly. "We hurt them. We hurt them badly. But they'll be back, and they'll bring more ships." This was just the first wave. Chen nodded. "How long do we have? Best guess? 30 days. Maybe 40. They'll send their real military this time. Not a peacekeeping force. We need to prepare for the next phase. Then we will," Chen said. "We've shown them we can fight. Now we show them we can win." The communication ended. Martinez turned back to her displays, watching the damaged Council fleet retreating beyond Mars. They had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. In orbit around Mars, Commander Thrax composed his report to the Council. He tried to find words to explain how a primitive, single-planet species had destroyed nearly half of his fleet. He tried to describe weapons that should not exist and tactics that defied Council doctrine, but only one sentence felt true. "We have severely underestimated humanity. On Earth, weapons factories increased production. New defense platforms were deployed. Scientists worked on even more devastating weapons. Humanity had tasted victory, and they were hungry for more. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. You do not threaten a species that evolved fighting for survival on a death world. You do not demand surrender from people who have spent their entire history refusing to quit." 3 weeks after the first battle, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber on Concordia Station, their faces showing confusion and concern. War Marshal Krethix stood at the central podium, his red scales gleaming under the chamber lights. "The 7th Enforcement Fleet has been neutralized," Krethix announced. "Of 200 ships, only 116 remain operational. Commander Thrax has established a defensive position around Mars and awaits instructions." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several representatives stood to speak at once, their voices overlapping in multiple languages until the translation system struggled to keep up. Diplomat Valorian, the one who had visited Earth, raised his 4 arms for silence. "This is unacceptable. A single-planet species with primitive technology should not be capable of such resistance." "What happened?" Krethix displayed tactical data on the chamber's main screen. "They used kinetic weapons, fired from concealed platforms. They employed nuclear-pumped lasers, a technology we abandoned 3,000 years ago as too unstable. And they deployed swarm tactics using artificial intelligence systems. Each strategy targeted specific weaknesses in our standard peacekeeping doctrine. Then, we adapt," said Representative Scrath, a insectoid species known for their military prowess. "Send the 3rd Battle Fleet. 800 ships. Overwhelm their defenses through superior numbers." The vote was unanimous. The Council had never failed a compliance operation in 10,000 years. They would not start now. War Marshal Krethix himself took command of the 3rd Battle Fleet. His flagship, the Inevitable Victory, was twice the size of any ship in the 7th Fleet. His captains were veterans of actual military conflicts, not peacekeepers. His weapons systems were designed to destroy, not intimidate. "We will show these humans the cost of defying the Council," Krethix told his officers. "Prepare for immediate deployment to the Sol system." On Earth, humanity watched the new fleet assemble at the edge of their sensor range. General Martinez stood in the command center, her face grim as the tactical displays showed 800 red icons moving into formation. "They brought their real military this time," she said. "Can we stop them?" President Williams asked, via secure video link. Martinez was quiet for a moment. "We can hurt them. Badly. But we need to make them understand something important." "What's that?" "That every step closer to Earth will cost them more than they can afford to pay." The 3rd Battle Fleet began its approach, moving cautiously through the outer solar system. They swept the asteroid belt with sensor scans, identifying and destroying every mining platform they could find. They eliminated dozens of human defense installations, but they could not find them all. When the fleet passed Neptune's orbit, the first surprise hit them. Humanity had seeded the outer planet's orbital paths with mines. Not regular mines, but antimatter mines. Each contained just a few grams of antimatter, suspended in magnetic bottles. When Council ships passed within range, proximity sensors detonated the mines. The matter-antimatter annihilation released energy equivalent to large nuclear weapons. 6 ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by the explosions. Another 11 were severely damaged, their shields overloaded by the raw power of the blasts. Antimatter weapons, Krethix said, his voice steady despite the shock. They have weaponized antimatter. How is that possible for a species that has not achieved FTL travel? His science officer had no answer. Antimatter production required massive energy and sophisticated containment systems. It should have been beyond Earth's capabilities. The fleet continued forward, destroying every mine they detected. But the delays cost them time, and time allowed humanity to prepare the next phase. As the fleet approached Jupiter, they encountered something new. Clouds of microscopic objects filled the space around the gas giant. Billions of tiny particles drifting in complex patterns. Sensor scans identified them as some kind of nanomachines. Avoid the clouds, Krethix ordered. Navigation. Plot a course around them. But the clouds moved. They flowed through space, like living things, intercepting the fleet's path. When the first ships made contact, the nanomachines attached to their hulls and began replicating. They consumed the ship's armor, using the raw materials to build more of themselves. Within hours, 20 ships were covered in the spreading nanite swarms. The microscopic machines ate through hulls, disabled weapons, and infiltrated life support systems. Crews abandoned ship as the vessels slowly disintegrated around them. "This is a war crime!" Valorian screamed over the communication channel from Concordia Station. "Nanite weapons are banned under Council law. They are uncontrollable and dangerous to all life." Ambassador Chen responded from Earth with cold precision. "We are not bound by Council law. You declared us non-compliant. These are the consequences." Krethix ordered his fleet to burn the infected ships with energy weapons, sterilizing them before the nanites could spread further. It worked, but it cost them more time and ships. Then came the worst part. As the fleet regrouped near Mars to link up with the remains of the 7th Fleet, several crew members began showing symptoms of illness. It started with the Kreth species soldiers. They developed respiratory problems, skin rashes, and severe immune responses. Within days, 100 warriors were dead. Medical officers investigated frantically. What they found horrified them. "It's a biological weapon," the chief medical officer reported to Krethix. "A virus specifically engineered to target Kreth physiology. It attacks our respiratory system and triggers catastrophic immune response." "How did it get aboard our ships?" "We must have been exposed during the Mars encounter. The virus has a long incubation period. It was designed for us, specifically, targeting our genetic markers." Krethix felt ice in his veins. "Check for other species-specific pathogens." Over the next week, the horror multiplied. Valorian species developed a fungal infection that ate their nervous system. The insectoid Skroth people found their exoskeletons softening and dissolving. Each of the Council's primary military species faced a unique biological threat. The humans had done the impossible. They had created targeted biological weapons for species they had only known about for months. It should have taken years of research and genetic sampling. Yet somehow, humanity had prepared these weapons and deployed them with surgical precision. The fleet's morale collapsed. Soldiers refused to leave their ships. Captains demanded immediate medical evacuation. Some vessels broke formation and began retreat toward Council space without orders. Krethix made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships, full retreat. Exit the Sol system and establish quarantine protocols. We need medical support and time to develop countermeasures. As the third battle fleet limped away from Earth, they left behind 300 destroyed or disabled ships. The remaining 500 vessels carried thousands of sick crew members and the knowledge that they had been beaten by an enemy they still did not understand. On Concordia Station, the Council watched in stunned silence as the battle reports came in. For the first time in their recorded history, they had lost a military engagement against a primitive species. Representative Scroth spoke into the silence. What are these humans? How can a pre-FTL species possess such weapons? War Marshal Krethix appeared on the main display, his face showing exhaustion and something else fear. I do not know what they are, but I know what we did wrong. What? Valorian demanded. We treated First Contact as conquest. They treated it as war. And these humans know how to wage war in ways we cannot imagine. On Earth, General Martinez addressed her command staff. They're retreating. They'll go back to their council and debate. They'll analyze their failures and plan their next move. We have maybe 60 days before they return, with everything they have. Can we survive that? Someone asked. Martinez looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses, its weapons, its people united in purpose. We survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear standoffs. We'll survive this too. Because that's what humans do. We survive. And we make sure anyone who threatens us regrets it. The war was escalating, and humanity was just getting started. The emergency council session on Concordia Station lasted for 3 days. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered in the Grand Chamber, their voices rising in anger, fear, and confusion. The holographic displays showed the devastating losses from both fleet engagements. Nearly 400 ships destroyed or disabled. Thousands of crew members dead or infected with engineered diseases. And humanity still sat on their planet, defiant and dangerous. Diplomat Valorian stood at the central podium, his 4 arms trembling. We must understand what we are facing. I propose we conduct a full analysis of Earth and its history before we take further action. What is there to analyze? War Marshal Krethix growled. They are a violent species that refuses to accept civilized integration. We should authorize the Grand Fleet and end this threat. Perhaps, Valorian said carefully. But should we not understand why a pre-FTL species possesses weapons technology that defeats our military doctrine? Should we not question how they created biological weapons targeting species they met only months ago? The chamber fell silent. These were good questions that no one wanted to answer. Representative Scrath clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. I support the analysis. We have been following standard integration protocols, but clearly something is different about humanity. We need to know what. The vote passed. A research team of xenobiologists, military analysts, and historians was assembled. Their task was simple but critical. Study Earth and determine what made humanity so dangerous. 3 weeks later, the research team presented their findings. Dr. Melvix, a Valorian scientist, took the podium. Behind him, holographic displays showed images of Earth. It looked beautiful from space, blue and green and white, peaceful and inviting. We began by analyzing Earth's classification, Melvix said. According to our standard planetary rating system, Earth is a Class 1-2 death world. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Most species came from Class 1 or Class 2 worlds, peaceful planets with mild weather and abundant resources. What makes it a Class 1-2? Someone asked. The displays changed, showing Earth's surface in detail. Volcanoes erupting, hurricanes tearing across oceans, earthquakes splitting the ground, tsunamis drowning coastlines. Earth is geologically hyperactive, Melvix explained. The planet experiences frequent natural disasters that would devastate civilized settlements. But that is just the beginning. New images appeared. Predatory animals with fangs and claws, venomous snakes and spiders, sharks and crocodiles, bears and big cats. Earth's evolutionary pressure created an ecosystem of extreme competition. Nearly every animal species is either a predator or evolved defenses against predation. The biodiversity is remarkable, but it comes with constant danger. More images. Bacteria under microscopes, viruses attacking cells, parasites burrowing into tissue. Earth's microbial life is exceptionally aggressive. Humanity evolved alongside diseases that would kill most council species within hours. Their immune system is a biological warfare laboratory, constantly fighting infections we cannot imagine surviving. The council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But surely humanity built civilization to escape these dangers? Valorian asked. Melvix shook his head. That is what makes them unique. Humanity did not escape the danger. They conquered it. They turned their death world into a tool for evolution. The displays showed human history. Ancient tribes hunting animals 10 times their size. Humans diving into oceans to catch fish. Humans climbing mountains and crossing deserts. Humans living in every environment from frozen Arctic to scorching jungle. Humanity spread across their entire planet despite the dangers. They learned to hunt the predators that hunted them. They domesticated animals and plants, turning threats into resources. They built immunity to diseases that should have ended them. They adapted to environments that killed other species. Melvix paused, letting the information sink in. Every other species in the Council evolved on worlds where cooperation was sufficient for survival. We developed intelligence to coordinate hunting or gathering. We created societies based on mutual benefit and shared resources. Humanity evolved differently. They developed intelligence to solve problems we never faced. How to kill an animal stronger than you. How to survive in climates your body was not designed for. How to turn everything in their environment into a weapon or tool. The displays showed human weapons throughout history. Stone spears, bronze swords, iron cannons. Their entire civilization is built on the concept of converting threats into advantages. When they discovered fire, they used it as a weapon. When they discovered chemistry, they made explosives. When they split the atom, they built bombs. Every scientific advancement becomes militarized within years. War Marshal Krethix stood up. This explains their weapons, but not their strategy. How did they know our weaknesses? How did they prepare defenses before we even made contact? Melvix brought up new data. We detected a probe that entered their system 23 years ago. We believed it passed through unnoticed. We were wrong. Humanity captured it, reverse-engineered the technology, and used it to monitor our communications for 2 decades. Shocked silence filled the chamber. They have been watching us. Melvix continued. They studied our languages, our politics, our military tactics, and our biology. They knew we were coming long before we announced ourselves, and they prepared accordingly. Representative Scrath clicked her mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You are saying they have been preparing for war with us for 20 years? Based on a single captured probe? Yes, because that is how humans think. When they detect a potential threat, they prepare for the worst possible scenario. They do not hope for peace. They ready themselves for war while appearing peaceful. It is a survival strategy ingrained in their evolution. Valorian's forearms gestured wildly. This is madness. How can a species function with such paranoia? It is not paranoia when your planet is actively trying to kill you, Melvix said quietly. For humanity, assuming the worst and preparing for it is simply being realistic. It is why they survived when 5 previous dominant species on their planet went extinct. The displays showed fossilized bones, dinosaurs, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, all dead while humanity survived. Earth has experienced 5 mass extinction events. Each time, over 70% of life died. Humanity's ancestors survived every single extinction. They survived ice ages that covered their continents in glaciers. They survived supervolcano eruptions that blocked out the sun. They survived plagues that killed half their population. And after each disaster, they came back stronger. Melvix looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the council. Honored representatives, we have made a critical error. We treated humanity as a primitive species that needed to be integrated into civilized society. But humanity is not primitive. They are survivors. And survivors do not surrender. They fight with everything they have. Then what do we do? Valorian asked. We cannot allow a hostile species to exist uncontrolled. War Marshal Krethix stood. We authorize the Grand Fleet. 4,000 ships. We end this threat. Before humanity develops FTL travel and spreads beyond their system. If we act now, we can contain them. And if we fail? Someone asked. Krethix's scales darkened. Then we will have created an enemy that knows no mercy, fears no odds, and never surrenders. An enemy that turns every setback into a weapon and every defeat into a lesson. An enemy that evolved on a death world where only the most ruthless survive. The vote was called. Authorization for the Grand Fleet passed with 39 votes in favor, 8 against. It was the largest military deployment in Council history. Ambassador Chen received the news on Earth within hours. A spy inside the Council organization sent the warning through encrypted channels. Chen stood before the United Earth Assembly and delivered the message. The Council has authorized their Grand Fleet, 4,000 ships. They are coming to destroy us completely. Panic started to spread, but Chen raised his hand for silence. We knew this was possible. We have prepared for it. Now we show them what happens when you threaten a species that refuses to die. General Martinez activated the final phase of humanity's defense plan. Project Prometheus, the last line of defense, began its deployment. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. You could push humanity to the edge of extinction. You could throw overwhelming force against them. But you could not make them quit, because humanity did not evolve to quit. They evolved to survive. And they would show the Council what survival really meant. The Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of Council space. 4,000 warships, representing the combined military might of 47 civilizations. War Marshal Krethix stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the armada form into battle groups. This force had never been fully deployed in the Council's 10,000-year history. It was created to fight theoretical wars against species that might one day threaten galactic peace. Now it would be used to destroy humanity. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. We can begin the jump to Earth's system on your command. Krethix nodded slowly. Proceed. And may this action bring peace to the galaxy. The Grand Fleet entered faster than light travel, expecting to arrive at Earth in 3 days. They would overwhelm the human defenses, destroy their military capabilities, and occupy the planet. It was unfortunate but necessary. What Krethix did not know was that humanity was not waiting to be attacked. 2 days before the Grand Fleet arrived, human ships appeared simultaneously at 15 different Council worlds. The ships were crude compared to Council vessels, clearly built using barely understood FTL technology. But they worked, and they carried something terrible. On the industrial world of Kreth Prime, home to War Marshal Krethix's species, 3 human ships appeared in orbit. They ignored the defense platforms and civilian ships. They did not fire weapons or issue demands. Instead, they deployed thousands of small objects into stable orbits around the planet. The objects activated immediately. Each one was a von Neumann machine, a self-replicating robot, programmed with a simple directive: consume and multiply. They began eating asteroids, space debris, and abandoned satellites. They broke down the raw materials and used them to build copies of themselves. Within 6 hours, there were 10,000 machines. Within 12 hours, 100,000. They spread through the orbital space like a metallic plague, consuming everything they touched. When they ran out of space debris, they moved to orbital stations, then satellites, then shipyards. The Kreth Defense Forces tried to fight back, but the machines were too numerous and too small to effectively target. Every destroyed machine was replaced by 10 more. The self-replication was exponential and unstoppable. By the end of the first day, Kreth Prime's entire orbital infrastructure was gone, converted into millions of replicating machines that continued to grow and spread. The same scene played out on 14 other Council worlds. Industrial centers, shipyard systems, trading hubs. Each one saw their orbital installations systematically dismantled by machines that could not be stopped through conventional warfare. Panic spread through Council space. Worlds with populations in the billions watched helplessly as centuries of orbital construction disappeared in days. Ships could not dock. Trade stopped. Communication satellites fell silent. The machines did not harm the planets themselves, but they destroyed everything humanity needed to threaten Earth. On Concordia Station, the Council emergency session descended into chaos. Representatives screamed at each other, demanding action, seeking blame, and asking how this was possible. Diplomat Valorian tried to restore order. How did they get FTL technology? How did they reach our worlds? This should be impossible. Dr. Melvick stood at his console, analyzing the data with growing horror. They reverse-engineered our captured ships. They took technology that should require decades to understand, and made it functional in weeks. And these von Neumann machines, they are using our own tactics against us. What do you mean, our tactics? Someone shouted. 3,000 years ago, the Council used self-replicating machines to build our first space stations. We banned the technology after an accident nearly consumed an entire moon. These machines use the same principles but with better programming and no safety limits. Humanity found the records in our databases and weaponized our own abandoned technology. The bitter irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity had turned the Council's own history into a weapon. Then came worse news. Human Special Forces teams, wearing advanced combat armor and carrying weapons that should not exist, infiltrated Concordia Station itself. They moved through the station's maintenance tunnels, avoiding security systems with precision that suggested detailed knowledge of the station's layout. When they struck, it was fast and brutal. Security forces, trained for riot control and minor disputes, faced soldiers who fought like they expected to die and were determined to take their enemies with them. The humans used tactics from their bloody history: ambushes, explosives, psychological warfare, and ruthless efficiency. Within 4 hours, the human teams captured 23 Council representatives, including Diplomat Valorian and Representative Scrath. They secured them in the station's emergency shelter and sealed the doors with welded metal and explosive traps. Then humanity delivered their message. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on every communication channel in Council space. Every ship, every station, every world received the broadcast simultaneously. His expression was cold and professional. Members of the Galactic Council, you demanded our surrender. You invaded our home. You sent your armies to conquer us. Now, you will listen to our terms. The Council members who remained free watched in stunned silence. Effective immediately, all Council military forces will cease hostile action against humanity and withdraw to minimum safe distance from Earth. The von Neumann machines currently dismantling your orbital infrastructure will be shut down once compliance is verified. Your captured representatives will be returned unharmed. Chen paused, letting the relief sink in before delivering the next part. In return, humanity demands the following: full recognition of Earth as a sovereign system with no Council jurisdiction, payment of reparations for the military action against our world, to be determined by neutral arbitration, immediate ceasefire, and formal treaty, recognizing our independence. Another pause. The Council members began to relax slightly. These terms were harsh, but acceptable compared to complete destruction. And finally, Chen said, his voice dropping to something colder. Humanity will be granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and veto authority over military actions. Outrage erupted across the council. Give humanity a council seat? Grant them veto power? It was unthinkable. Chen continued as if he could hear their protests. You have 48 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, we will show you what real war looks like. The machines destroying your infrastructure are just the beginning. The captured representatives are just leverage. What we have prepared for total war will end your civilization. The broadcast ended. Silence filled Concordia Station. War Marshal Krethix, still en route to Earth with the Grand Fleet, received the broadcast and immediately ordered a halt. His fleet stopped in the empty space between stars, waiting for orders from the Council. On Concordia Station, the remaining Council members gathered for an emergency vote. They had 48 hours, but the decision was already clear. We cannot fight them, Dr. Melvick said quietly. They have shown us they can reach our worlds, destroy our infrastructure, and infiltrate our most secure stations. And they claim this is not their full capability. If we continue, what will they do next? They are bluffing, someone argued. Can we afford to find out? Valorian's deputy asked. What if they are not bluffing? What if they have been holding back this entire time? The vote was called. The chamber was silent as each representative cast their decision. When the count finished, the result was unanimous. The Council accepted humanity's terms completely and without modification. The ceasefire order went out immediately. The Grand Fleet received orders to return home. Human teams on Concordia Station received codes to deactivate the von Neumann machines. Within hours, the self-replicating machines powered down and fell silent, leaving the Council worlds damaged but not destroyed. 1 week later, the formal treaty signing took place on neutral ground, aboard a station hastily constructed at the midpoint between Earth and Council space. Ambassador Chen signed for humanity. 20 Council representatives signed on behalf of their species. The ceremony was brief and professional. No speeches, no celebrations. Just the acknowledgement that the war was over and humanity had won. As the representatives prepared to leave, War Marshal Krethix approached Ambassador Chen privately. His scales were dull, showing exhaustion and defeat. I must know, Krethix said quietly. Were you bluffing? About having more weapons? About showing us real war? Chen looked at the warrior who had led 2 fleets against Earth. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he smiled slightly. Yes, Chen said. We were bluffing. Relief washed over Krethix's face. Then, Chen continued. Everything we used against you, every weapon and tactic, was from our defensive arsenal. We built them to protect Earth, not to wage offensive war. We never showed you our offensive capabilities because we never deployed them. The relief vanished. You mean, everything you saw, all the destruction, all the casualties, all the von Neumann machines eating your orbital infrastructure, that was us holding back. That was us being restrained. That was us trying not to start a real war. Chen stepped closer, his voice dropping. You invaded our home with peacekeepers and expected surrender. We responded with measured force. You sent your battle fleets, and we showed you we could defend ourselves. You authorized your Grand Fleet to destroy us, and we demonstrated we could strike your worlds. Each time, we used the minimum force necessary to make you stop. Each time, we held back our most devastating weapons. Each time, we gave you a chance to end this peacefully. Krethix felt cold horror settling into his chest. What would you have done if we had not surrendered? Chen's expression was blank. You would have learned why Earth is classified as a death world. You would have discovered what happens when you threaten a species that evolved by surviving extinction events. You would have understood why we do not fear overwhelming odds. He turned to leave, then stopped. We named our final contingency plan Project Prometheus. Do you know the story? Krethix shook his head. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. As punishment, he was chained to a rock and tortured for eternity. But he never regretted his choice. He never surrendered. Chen walked away, leaving Krethix standing alone. The galaxy learned quickly about Earth's victory. The news spread through council space, carried by merchants and travelers. A pre-FTL species had defeated the combined might of the Galactic Council. They had forced terms. They had gained a council seat. Some species were horrified. Some were impressed. All were wary. Humanity took their seat on the council and immediately began voting on policies. They pushed for reforms to integration protocols. They demanded respect for sovereignty. They advocated for species rights. And every time they voted, the council remembered what happened when you threatened them. The empty orbital spaces around 15 council worlds served as permanent reminders. Ambassador Chen addressed the council at the first full session where humanity participated. You treated first contact as conquest, he said. You assumed we would surrender. You believed your technology and numbers guaranteed victory. You were wrong. He looked around the chamber at the faces of 47 species. We treated first contact as an interview. You failed. But we are willing to work with you now, as equals, as partners, but never as subjects. The galaxy learned a new rule that day. It was written in destroyed fleets, dismantled infrastructure, and surrendered pride. Never threaten a species that evolved in hell. Never demand surrender from people who survived extinction. Never start a war with humanity unless you are prepared to face opponents who will do whatever it takes to remain free. Earth remained independent, dangerous, and watching. And the galaxy never forgot.